I'm Clint Sockman. I'm Vice President of Advanced Green Technologies and Advanced Roofing. I've been with the company now for 15 years and have seen the transformation from where we started as a roofing company with a small HVAC business to where we are today with 7 offices operating inside really 4 different business verticals: our roofing business, our HVAC business, the Advanced Green Technologies brand, our solar business, and then most recently our acquisition into the electrical world to support the solar and HVAC operations of MSC Electric, which really kind of ties our brands all together, working inside the sustainable arena. And today, you know, we're going to talk about the EV charging networks and options that are out there, how people are using the technology and what the future looks like, which it's very bright. You know, EVs really kind of fit into the larger theme of AGT and what we do as a company. AGT is a solar developer. We engineer and construct and build solar carports. I head up that division currently, and the carport is really a natural vehicle for us to put EV car charging stations out into the marketplace. And through that, you know, we've come up with varying partnerships with some of the industry leading manufacturers out there. And today, you know, we're very fortunate to have ChargePoint with us. Jeff Roth with ChargePoint heads up sales here in the state of Florida. ChargePoint manufactures and operates the largest network of EV car charging stations in the nation. You'll see in our background here, I believe this is a Google parking lot with a lot of the ChargePoint networked products out on it. They really work with a lot of the Fortune 500s around the country, Disney, City of Miami, really you name it. And they're a leader in the business and in the industry, kind of really forging the way with that goal of getting EVs into every driver's hands in the country. The projections are phenomenal. I've been through the presentation. I really think it's educational and brings a lot with that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jeff and let him take way. So like I said, if anybody does have questions, please use that Q&A, use that chat down below, and we look forward to a great day. Jeff, it's all you.
Great. Thanks, Clint, for the intro. So as Clint mentioned, my name is Jeff Rothy. I'm the sales director for ChargePoint here in Florida. Been at ChargePoint for about 3.5 years. Watched the Florida market grow extensively over those past 3 years. And 1 second, there we go. So I want to go into some basics as far as overall EV marketplace and growth here in Florida. That's strange, 1 second. There we go. And then talk a little bit about the EV charging basics, just kind of a little intro into EV charging. And then for the multifamily people, as well as for the retail people on the phone, why you would want to offer EV charging as a mandate and how to kind of best understand EV drivers. And then lastly, we'll talk about what's needed for your property to become EV ready. So just to kind of talk about Florida, as I mentioned, I think we have a question poll first.
Hey guys, quick poll. How many attendees have had owners, clients, or residents inquire about EV charging options? We'll give you about 30 seconds. All right. Survey says most say less than 5. We've got a good between 5 and 15 in the middle, and then a few over 15.
Okay, so it looks like we have a pretty good spread of individuals from having residents or customers looking to add EVs. So just talk about, as I mentioned, about Florida. 1 second here, some technical difference. So Florida recently passed the state of Washington and has become #2 in the US with EVs. There's a lot of numbers out there, but this is from the DMV registration that shows the growth year over year with EVs. So the big number there, as you can see, is that Florida is growing about 45% annually. And this is with just a few cars that are available on the marketplace today. As more cars come to the market, including the upcoming F-150, another Tesla product, and a few other things, we expect that number to continue to grow pretty steadily over the next few years. So we also have top Florida metros to show you the growth is really extensive in places like Orlando, Jacksonville, and the Tampa market as well. So it's not just South Florida, but it's all the metro areas. And we're even starting to see some growth up in the Panhandle now this past year with a lot of vehicles being registered up there. So a little bit about ChargePoint. So all of ChargePoint stations are networked to the cloud. So when you are a ChargePoint driver, you have a ChargePoint account that is free to the driver. And we're able to see where our ChargePoint drivers reside. So when you put in a charging station at your retail or multifamily location, we can tell you how many existing ChargePoint drivers are within those locations. So you can see kind of scattered around Florida within 100 miles of some of the major metros, as well as Tallahassee or Jacksonville. You can see where all the drivers are currently at. And this number is continuing to grow. I think since this slide was created a few months ago, I think we're now over 25,000 Florida drivers. So just wanted to show a couple key highlighted Florida properties that are recent customers. So we have some 3 big towers down in South Florida, the Jade Signature in Sunny Isles Beach. This is a new construction project that opened in 2019, and they added 12 stations. And then you had the Mark at Brickell. So that was a product condo that was already existing. So with the Jade, they planned for stations at open. The Mark, we came back in, I think that building was built in the mid 2000s. So the stations came after the fact as residents started to ask for it. So they put in 1 dual port station for the valet to manage. And then over in St. Pete, the way that building was built is they designed conduit in each parking space. So as a driver moves in and decides they want to add a charger to their individual parking space, they call us, we come out and put a personalized station right in their parking space. So those are 3 examples of tower solutions. And then we also have garden style condos like the Beach Place over in Longboat Key off of Sarasota, which is a condo I think built in the 80s. So now they're starting to look at adding stations. They have 1 dual port already for one of the buildings. And you also have the Caspian, which is a new construction apartment complex in Delray Beach. So this kind of gives you a glimpse of some of the condos and apartments in Florida that we do business with.
All right, time for another poll. True or false, EV charging usage growth over the next 5 years is expected to decline? I'll give you guys about 15 seconds. All right, it looks like we have some very savvy attendees today. We have 100% false, and you are absolutely right.
Yes, that is correct. So as you may have heard in the news, the EV sales forecast in the United States is just scheduled to grow rapidly over the next 5 years. So we're right in the beginning of the curve going up in 2020, but you see that numbers skyrocketing by the time we get to 2025 and 2030. So with that is more vehicles coming from every major automaker, more people considering giving up gas vehicles for electric vehicles, and then expected future tax credits and rebates that will come will help grow that market all over the next 10 years. So a little bit about ChargePoint. ChargePoint's been in the industry since 2007. We were founded, headquartered in Silicon Valley. All we do is EV charging stations. There's nothing else that we manage. So our entire business is around electric vehicle charging and the drivers and the services needed for that. We're about 600 employees worldwide. Within that, we have 200 employees in our engineering and R&D staff. So what that means to you as a customer is that what we do is design, engineer, and manufacture all of the hardware ourselves to work just for our network and for our customers. And we are the largest EV fueling network in North America. As you can see, we have over 100,000 plugs nationwide in Canada and the US. And this kind of just gives you a glimpse of where they're located at. We just finally hit our 50th state, and that was a station that was put into North Dakota this past month. So we now are in all 50 states. So I just want to go into some basic electric vehicle charging and kind of some electrical numbers to explain the basics of what EV drivers are looking for. So unlike a gas driver who fills up only when they need to go on a long road trip or when their vehicle is almost empty, an electric vehicle driver tops off, meaning they charge wherever they can. They charge at home or at their condo. They charge at work if available. They charge at a retail or a movie. and they charge in parking garages. So no matter what percentage of range they're at, the drivers will charge wherever they can. So it's a different type of mentality. Drivers of EVs rarely ever wait until they're down to their last 20, 25 miles. They want to be as full as possible. That helps prevent some of that range anxiety. So when you're looking at putting in a charging solution for your property, you have three different options. So level 1 charging is just 110 volt, 120 volt plug. So a standard wall outlet, an 8 to 12 amps. So that was more common probably 8 to 10 years ago when EVs had much smaller batteries and there weren't that many out there. So you would see condos or properties would put in just a row of plugs for the drivers to put in. That really doesn't do much anymore because the batteries are much larger, people are driving much farther. And when you charge at level 1, you're only getting about 3 to 5 miles of range per hour charge. So even if you're charging 12 hours overnight, you're only going to get about 30 to 35 miles put back in the vehicle. So it really doesn't work for most situations. About the only time that works is if someone has a plug in their personal garage and maybe has a plug-in hybrid vehicle that also has a gas backup. Commonly we see now is level 2. So that's a 208, 240 volt in Florida, 30 amp plug. So that gives about 16 to 25 miles of range depending on the type of vehicle you have. So that'll top off most people. If they need to put in a 100-mile commute, they will fill that back up in about 4 hours. With that, you need a 30 amp worth of current, so a 40 amp circuit in the panel. So when you're thinking about adding those plugs, you have to kind of look at your property and see how much available power you have left in your panel. We can get into that when we look at the site information later. Lastly, I want to talk about DC fast. So DC fast, you may have heard of like Tesla superchargers or the superchargers. So DC fast is a 480 volt, about 80 to 100 amp charger. It puts it closer to about 200 miles of range in a vehicle for every hour plugged in. These are a lot more expensive. A lot of people think they want a DC fast at their property until they see how expensive they are. So a level 2 station, average about $4,000 to $7,000. A DC fast station closer to $40,000. So that doesn't include all the power that's needed for those. So most commonly, the best solution for places where vehicles are parked for long-term is a level 2 solution. So also what's different about DC fast is that there's no single standard. So level 2, the plug is a J1772. It works on all vehicles, but a level 3 DC fast station, that is Tesla has their own plug, Compo, CCS, and Chatamo. So the vehicles haven't determined which plug they want to use on all the vehicles. So until there's a really standard, you have to really be careful what type of DC fast solution you put out into the market. And with ChargePoint, we have solutions for every station. So you have like the home personal chargers for someone's garage, a CPF 25, which is what you would put into a condo's personal parking space. A CT 4000 is common in a level 2 retail or apartment or condo shared station. And then you have a couple of different DC fast solutions depending on the location. So a big difference in most EV stations is whether it's networked or non-networked. So a non-network station is, you'll see them out in areas such as airports, things like that, or a Tesla destination charger. What non-network means is that it's just a standalone plug. It already has the cable to plug into your vehicle, but it doesn't have any sort of communication or data backup. There's no control. There's no way to do any sort of power bill back. So it's really limited. So non-network stations work well if it's in someone's personal driveway or a behind the fence fleet location. But for a public or a multi-use station, you really want to look at a network station or what's commonly called a smart station. So with ChargePoint, you have the mobile app. So that's a big key with adding a network station. So if you're an EV driver, you can use the mobile app to see where are all the charging stations. So if you look at this picture in front of you, on the app, you see anything that's blue means there's a vehicle plugged in and charging at that station. And then anything that's green means there's a station there and it's open and available. So if you're an EV driver and you're pulling into downtown Miami, you want to be able to pull the app up and see which garages have open stations so you make sure you drive to the correct place. Otherwise, if you have a non-network station, you could pull up to a station only to find out that the station is occupied or not working. So the app works in real time. It tells you if there's any issues. It tells you if someone's using the station. And that's really important as more and more vehicles come to the market and the stations start getting more heavily used. So with that, you can also see station pictures, station information. So a lot of times if you're going to a parking garage, the app will tell you exactly what floor it's on, if it's on the north side of the garage or the south side of the garage. There's driver's tips, meaning drivers can leave tips back to the site host as well as to other drivers if there's any issues. And you can use Apple Pay, Android Pay, you can use your Apple Watch, a lot of different ways to charge with the mobile app.
All right, time for another poll. True or false, building owner operators can determine who can operate charging stations and when. Give it about 10 more seconds. All right, so the answer to that is actually true, and Jeff is going to tell us about that.
Yeah, so definitely, when you have a network station, then you can control who is using the stations. And there's a lot of other things you can also do to control. So the first option you can have with a network station, or the ChargePoint network station, is what's called waitlist. So this is really heavily used in a lot of the workplaces we have here in South Florida. So if you pull up to a station and there's 4 plugs and 4 cars already plugged in, from the mobile app or your RFID card, you can tap onto the station and get added to an online queue. It puts you in a wait list. That way you can go back to your condo or go to your workstation, and then once the station opens up, you can hold it for 15 or 30 minutes, and it'll hold that station for you to come down, move your car to the spot. And it's a way of moving more drivers through the station. What will also happen is it tells the drivers who are charging currently, once their vehicle is full, it'll give them a mobile notification telling them to please move their vehicle because there's other vehicles waiting to charge. So it's a way of gently nudging people out of the spaces once they're full so other people can use the station. What's really great is with ChargePoint is a lot of the different power management things that are capable. So if your building was built prior to probably 2005, most likely you don't have a lot of extra panel capacity. The buildings are built purposely for just the power they needed at the time. So if they have a parking garage or an outside deck, there's no extra power usually available for more than maybe 1 or 2 handles. So with ChargePoint, we have a couple different power management solutions for you. You can share a circuit so you can control the power between 2 handles, so you can put in 2 handles instead of 1, or you can even aggregate the power amongst the panel and put in 24 stations when you only really have the capacity for 10, and we just control the power if all 24 vehicles are plugged in at once. So it's really a way of adding more handles for more vehicles to be able to charge without having to add a lot more extra power. And we can determine this with a site visit, online site visit. We can come in and take a look at your existing panel and determine how much power you have and how many cars you'll be able to charge with that. And being able to manage access, so that's key, especially if it's an open access parking lot, being able to control who has access to the station. So you can, using the ChargePoint app, you can restrict the time of day. So if you don't want people charging your property overnight, you can have the station automatically turn off at nighttime hours. You could have the station automatically restricted to just residents or just employees. And you can control the time of day and all these different features so you make sure that you want the proper people using the station that should be. And lastly, a key message with network chargers is the ability to control pricing. So as you have more and more drivers, the less likely you are to see a free station out there. More people want to charge for usage. They want to recoup the amount of power that they're charging, and as well as maybe recoup some of the costs of putting in the stations. So through ChargePoint's pricing wizard, you can have up to 7 different pricing models. So for example, if you are a condo building, you can put in one price for residents. You could have a separate price for visitors. And you can also put in things like idle fees. And what idle fee means is if you have a vehicle that pulls in and they charge, and they're charging for 2 hours and their vehicle's full, and then after an hour, if they still haven't moved their vehicle, you start charging them what's called an idle fee of $1 or $2 an hour to start charging them until they move their vehicle. That way it encourages people to not leave their vehicle in a space overnight or for extra days if they're not moving, if they're not actively charging. So it's a similar model as when you have people moving into condos. You may put in a charger, only have 2 cars at first, so you have the same 2 people always charging. But as more cars come, now those 2 people have to learn to share. So by putting in these pricing policies, encourages people to move their vehicles. If not, then you're able to generate some revenue from those drivers. And ChargePoint handles all of the billing. So everything that happens, the customers would contact ChargePoint for any billing issues. And then we reimburse 90% of what is charged back to the station owner. Yeah, so to become EV ready, that's key. Is really what you want to do is looking at, if you're a condo, you want to survey the residents. If you're a workplace, also you may want to survey any customers or drivers to see how much interest there is in adding a station. So for a condo, you do a resident survey. You may find if there's any vehicles currently, or if you were to put in a station, how likely those residents or customers would be in switching to an EV. So just kind of give you an idea of putting in EV station and how many you should put in. It also helps you learn about EV charging amenities of any peer properties. So especially if you're a condo or an apartment complex, you want to make sure that you have the best amenities as everyone else. So if there's other apartments or condos in your town or in your area that have charging stations, you want to be able to, you're able to match those as well. With a needs assessment, we can also tell you what electrical capacity is available. So depending on how many EVs you may have or how many chargers you want, we can tell you what you can do and then go through the different options with that. Right now, there's no incentives available in Florida, but we expect those to maybe come in the future. So if there's any available, we'll be able to let you know, and then help with any sort of willingness to pay and setting up any of those pricing options.
Hey, Jeff, now might be a good time. We have a question from Victor in the audience inquiring about an FP&L potential program that he's heard of where they're either installing or subsidizing chargers. Is there, do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so FPL has a program. Well, they'll put in a station only. Right now, they're just doing workplaces or some retail areas where FPL will actually put in the station and then own and operate it on their end. So that is available for some workplaces. They have done it at locations such as Office Depot, Jupiter Medical Center, I think Baptist Health down in Miami. So they're looking for some workplaces to add more chargers to. So with this, you'll have people at AGT will be able to come on site and help you. So Clint's team will be able to come on site and perform a site walk and be able to put together some information as far as how much power you have available, and then really determine how much those costs would be. So to put in a charger, you have a lot of different things you have to look at. So they'll be able to put together that quote for you and also determine if there's any cellular issues, since the stations all work on cellular. So we have to make sure there's adequate cellular signal in that area. That's really only a concern mainly if you have a parking garage. If it's stations outside, that's usually not too much of an issue. And some things you really want to look at is what's called make ready. So what that means is if you're putting in stations and you're going to go through the work of adding conduit to just 2 stations, while we're going through the work and you think, okay, if we put in 2 stations, how much time is it going to be before we add more stations? So with that, we'll be able to take a look at the parking area and be able to add in extra conduits. So right now, if you just put in 2 stations, you would just get it, just the first 2. And then if you wanted to add more a year later, we'd have to start all over. Or we can plan for the future and just lay some extra conduit down the row, maybe have a little extra space in the panel. So once you're ready to add more, those upcoming costs in the future will be much less.
Hey, Jeff, we had a question in the comments. Can any car charge on the ChargePoint network regardless of whether it's CCS or CHAdeMO?
Yeah, so if it's a level 2 charger, all vehicles in North America can plug in standard on ChargePoint. If it's a Nissan or a Mitsubishi, those are about the only ones that use a CHAdeMO or Tesla adapter. They can use an adapter to use the DC fast stations, and then all of our DC fast stations also have a CCS connector. So ChargePoint stations do work with every vehicle that's sold in North America.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep. So this is kind of gives you an idea of how you want to lay out and plan for the future and putting in chargers, especially if there's a point where you have to dig up any sort of asphalt. You really don't want to have to do that twice. Also, we work with a lot of condo communities that may be planning a paving project in the future. So if you know you're getting ready to re-asphalt your parking surfaces in the next year or 2, this is a great time to start planning for this. You may not have a need for EV chargers now, but before you repave, it would be a great idea just to put out a few $100s worth of conduit through that and then pave over top of it. That way the infrastructure is already there, and then all we have to do in the future is pull some wire and add some stations. So it would save you a lot, and then you don't have to go through the hassle of having to tear up an asphalt or pavers or anything like that, because that's where the costs really get expensive. Okay, and next one. Oh, next slide, please.
There we go. All right, time for our last poll. True or false, EV charging stations may be purchased or rented depending on the client's preference. Give you guys about 15 seconds to hop in there. All right, a little bit of a split. It is actually true. And Jeff's going to tell us about that.
Yeah, so you have a lot of different acquisition methods with ChargePoint. So as a property owner, you have obviously the outright purchase. If you're a public sector or public government, or you are a business that uses a source wall contract, you have discounted pricing options with that. And that saves you the hassle of having to go out to a public RFP. You're able to use that contract to acquire any stations. And then ChargePoint also has a great program, which is really popular here in Florida, which is called ChargePoint as a Service. So what that means is it's a rental program where for $2,400 a year for 5 years or $2,750 a year for 3 years, we'll put in a dual port station on your property. Includes a full maintenance warranty. So anything that would ever happen to the station, even hurricane damage is completely covered. We'll replace the station at no cost to you. There's no deductibles. And also includes the mounting of the station. So the only cost to you would be your first year payment of $2,400, and then the electrical work to make the site ready for the station. So that's a great way to get into a charging station at no, not having to pay the extra cost of an outright purchase, which can be anywhere to $10,000 to $12,000 instead of $2,400. It's also a great program for you if you really want to just kind of test the waters. You can do a 3-year rental, and if 3 years you decide it's not for you, you can remove the station or go in a different direction. So really, to think about adding charging stations, there's a lot of different issues that can come up with putting in a station. So if you're an older property and you may not have any extra power, you're really going to have to look at adding in a new service or setting in a new transformer. If you're in an FPL service territory, a lot of times they'll set a new transformer at no cost, and then you would just have to pay for a new meter and a new service. So that could save you some money there. But those costs, setting a new transformer, new service, can be anywhere between $10,000 to $50,000. So there are some ways we can help reduce that by using the power management or putting in a community charger instead of personal chargers. So there's some ways you can kind of get around that to reduce that cost. Also, if you only have 480 power, you would have to put in a new transformer to power down to a 208 transformer. So there's some extra costs that we could take a look at. Also, adding a new panel or breakers. So that can cost you anywhere between $1,000 to $3,000. If you have an older panel, there may not be any space to add any new breakers into it. So a lot of times we have to set a new panel even though you have existing power. So that's going to cost you a few $1,000s to do that. Conduit runs, including wires, anywhere between $20 to $30 per foot, depending on the distance. So what's key with conduit runs is you want to get as close to the electric panel as possible. So if it's in the parking garage and the electric room is on the first floor, you want to put the chargers on the first floor. You don't want to go all the way to the 5th floor. If it's a condo building and you putting in service parking, you want to put in as close to the power room as possible. So with that, we also try to steer away from the most popular parking spaces that are more likely to have someone who does drive an EV block those stations. We try to find stations, locations that are kind of off to the side as well that EV drivers can use, and they most likely won't be blocked. Trenching. So anytime we can avoid any sort of trenching, that's key. So you can kind of see the shovel cost between landscaping. So just going through some mulch or dirt is about $20 a foot. But once you get into concrete asphalt, those costs really multiply. So avoiding any sort of trenching or boring through a parking lot is key. So we always try to find a spot on the other side that we can use if possible. Oddly enough, sometimes it may be even cheaper if you have a big parking lot to put a new service or a new transformer on the back end of the parking lot, to put those stations closer than that, than to have the stations bored through and coming from an existing panel. And then a lot of cities, a lot of municipalities require permits, drawings, inspections. So that you want to make sure that budget's in, because a lot of times the electrical costs aren't including these additional costs. So you want to really take a look at your city and find out what those permit costs would be. A lot of times they require engineer drawings as well. So you want to make sure you've budgeted those extra costs as well, so that doesn't pop up and blow a hole in your budget. So a lot of this thing is just, it's going to be saved by just figuring out who you want to work with, how to budget this. And if you're going through the budget process right now, looking at numbers like this, getting a free quote and being able to put those into next year's budget. But on a rule of thumb, we usually say for every parking space you want to put a charging station in, especially if it's a brand new service, it's going to be about $3,000 to $5,000 per parking space.
Awesome. We have a couple questions in here that I want to run by you, if I may. Let me find the first one. So the first one, with the price of oil going down, has the price per kilowatt to charge an EV gone down as well?
Well, the way ChargePoint works is the site owners set the rate. So even though oil has gone down, which I believe I just read an article this week, oil is now back up. It's going back to $2 a gallon. So those $1.80 a gallon days are probably over with pretty soon. But the price is set by the property owner. So if you're an FPL service territory, you're probably paying around 10 to 12 cents a kilowatt hour. And then, you know, a condo will charge maybe 20 to 25 cents. So even at 25 cents a kilowatt hour, the cost to charge a vehicle to go about 25 miles is about $1.70. So even at a 25 cents kilowatt hour, which is higher than the electrical rate, you're still driving lower than the price of gasoline. So there's some certain things with that, but that pricing is all controlled by the site owner, not by ChargePoint. So we just kind of encourage, give them some guidance, making sure they're not overcharging. If you pull up to a station and it's charged, they're charging more than 40 cents a kilowatt hour, that's way too expensive for an EV, at least in Florida. You'll see that out in California or more expensive states, but Florida, we're lucky to have fairly low cost electricity.
Awesome. And then shifting gears just a little bit, how long has the rental program been in place? Are there any local governments in Florida using the rental program?
Yeah, the rental program has been in place about 1.5 years now. We do have cities using it here in Florida. I'm trying to think of some off the top of my head, but like City of Palm Beach Gardens is going to be putting in about 30 through that rental program. So if you're a city and you're on a Sourcewell contract, there's specific pricing just for cities on Sourcewell contract. So you can go to your Sourcewell, log in, and it'll give you the pricing. But I believe it's about a 10% savings off the rental price through Sourcewell. Okay. So lastly, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the differences with ChargePoint and with AGT. We're going to really give you a good site assessment and project management and help you kind of handle this project for you. It's not something where we're just going to have you sign a quote and then leave you to figure this process out by yourself. Everything from the time the electrical needs to be put in till the station's installed and up and running, we'll be working with you on this. If you do the rental program or you go for the optional warranty program called Assure, that also covers all parts and labor. So meaning if a station has any sort of issue, a handle breaks or a screen goes out, or it's hit by lightning and it fries the modem, you can contact us. ChargePoint will come on site, we'll pay for the labor for the electrician to swap out the station and put in a new station at no charge to you. We also have 24/7 driver support. So that's key, because if it's Saturday night and your station is not working, you want to make sure you can get support as much as needed and not have to wait till Monday morning at 9 a.m. And there's also a separate hotline for the station owners, but also since the stations run on cellular, we are pinging the stations every 15 minutes. So a lot of times we'll know if there's a station issue before the station owner will. So we can restart the station remotely or start opening a service ticket if we notice a station problem before the owner even realizes it themselves. So there's a lot of benefits with going with the rental program and the warranty. And really the key is just trying to keep the station up and running for the drivers, because especially when you put these in a condo or an apartment community, the drivers that live there rely on these stations being working every day. This is their fueling station. If their station's not working, they may not be able to get to work the next day. So it's key that the station uptime is there. With our Assure warranty, we guarantee a 98% annual uptime on all of our stations.
All right, and that brings us to the end. Jeff, thank you so much for your time today. This